Well, welcome. I'm Tom Loucks. This is council preview time, and thank you for joining me. It's October 6th already, and I have Steve Barg, city administrator. Thanks for coming.
Good to be here, Tom. It's still fairly warm, believe it or not.
72 today.
Yeah, another nice day.
Yeah, and this weekend. So time council comes, which is the 12th. And again, this is at 7 p.m. for our regular council meeting. Should still be warm, I'm hoping.
Yeah. It sounds like we'll still be, up in the maybe 60s at least, if not lower 70s. And I think people have really enjoyed fall so far.
All right. Well, I'm double doing things. We got a little bit different look here, trying some better things here to make the program a bit smoother for everyone here. Well, let's get right into it, Steve. We've got a budget meeting, which is the first one for the 2022 budget. Starts at 5 p.m. before the regular council meeting. What's that all about?
Well, this is the first of our scheduled 4 budget meetings, Tom. We're scheduling them for 1 a week through early November. That's what it took last year. It may not take 4 meetings this year. We'll see what happens. We've been battling some structural budget issues in the last couple of years, and so we've had more meetings than we have in the past. But this first meeting at 5 p.m. on the 12th will be starting out with me giving a presentation of the proposed 2022 city budget. And I'll be walking through it, hitting the highlights. I'll be talking about things that I usually do. I'll have a PowerPoint presentation where I'll look at where do we stand with respect to debt, TIF districts, property tax rates compared to our neighboring communities, all those kind of things that people want to see kind of a dashboard of where we are. And then I'll go a little bit more into the particulars of this budget in terms of spending, taxing, that type of thing. My presentation usually lasts between 10 and 15 minutes. I'll take a few questions. And then we'll launch into really looking at the department budgets. And they're kind of grouped, as you see on your sheet there. This is last year's. I haven't done the agenda for this year's yet. But, general government, public safety, public works, parks and recreation. And we look at each of the groupings and say, okay, Steve, what's different this year? Most times the budget is fairly similar from year to year, with just the inflationary increases. And I'll highlight the things in each category that are a little bit new, a little bit different. And then I'll invite them. I'll say, okay, you've got all the public safety department heads here. If you have questions about fire, police, EMS, those kind of things, fire away. And then the council will bring up their concerns and questions. Those department heads will come to the podium and address them as best they can. Now, the goal for this first meeting is to go from 5 o'clock until about 6:45. We like to have maybe 10 or 15 minutes in between meetings. Gives council a chance to get up, stretch, go to the bathroom, get a drink, whatever, and then get ready for the 7 o'clock meeting. We never know, Tom, how far we're going to get in that first meeting. If you said, Steve, are we going to get through everything on this sheet, all the different categories of budgets? It depends. It depends on how many questions council has and where the discussion goes. We may get through that whole page and then come back to the next meeting to talk about changes, or we may still have a lot of areas to cover when we start the next meeting the following week.
All right, Steve. So this budget is for 2022. Can you give me amount the budget is it millions of dollars?
Yeah, we normally talk a lot about the general fund. The total budget is upwards of near $50 million. But the general fund budget, and that's the part that really ties directly to the tax rate that people pay on their properties. Yeah, the general fund budget is around $22.5 million, somewhere in there right now. And so, again, if I can just cover a little over half of that we get from taxes. So of our revenue for the general fund, about 55% comes from taxes. And then about 35% or so come from state aids. We get shared revenue, transportation aid, connecting highway aid, personal property aid. It's an offset payment. Even the offset payment we get for the franchise fees that we no longer collect goes into that. And then the last 10% or so, Tom, comes from fees, fines, licenses, permit, all those kind of things. That makes up about $1 out of every 10 in the general budget. Those are kind of high level, but that's kind of rounding it what it looks like. And so $22.5 million is sort of the starting point that we look at when we began this year for general fund.
All right. Well, what's on most people's minds, and I don't know if you can give me this at this point in time, probably not, is the tax increase. That's usually what people are concerned about, because this is what determines, right, the tax increase, but probably
Correct.
Not this meeting, because we got several to go, right?
Well, I will be proposing a tax rate increase in the budget that they receive. I'm not going to disclose that right now because the council itself has not heard that. I can tell you this. Last year we had a surprisingly high one compared to most years. It was 7.4%. The council, I think, did a very wise thing in terms of saying, look, we're not funding our services adequately because for many years we kept our tax rate increases way too low, oftentimes around 1/4% or 0.5%. We were using funds that we didn't realize weren't used best. Had to do with tax increment financing transfers. This year, I will be proposing a tax increase, but far short of the 7.4% that people experienced last year. But we do need to keep up with inflationary costs. I think people know that the inflation rate's increasing. Groceries, gas prices, all that are going up. Homeowners know that. And we will need some type of increase, I believe, to keep up with those costs.
Alrighty. Well, 5 p.m. It'll be on TV as well as our other platforms where anyone can come. Is there public comment at that meeting? I'm just curious.
There will be public comment at the beginning, and that's a great chance to come out and tell us what you think. And again, I want to say one more time, as we often do in these programs, call us, email us, send us, whatever, a letter. Find a way to connect with us and say, look, this is what my concerns are, the tax rate, the spending. I think that you got to spend more money in this area and less in this area. Sometimes you don't know everything. You think, well, gosh, if I tell them that they have to spend more money on the park across the street from me, they're going to have to cut somewhere. I don't know what to cut. You don't have to have the whole picture. Just tell us your concerns and your thoughts. And believe me, the council will take them very seriously.
Alrighty, Steve. If you need to call us, we have a new phone tree, 715-486-2000. That gets you to a list of departments. And then you should be able to reach someone if you do want to ask them, not just Steve or I. You can talk to the Public Works Director if needed. So just letting you know that. Well, let's move on to the regular agenda before we're out of time here, Steve. And that one's going to be, again, you said 7 o'clock, same night, October 12th.
Correct.
And what are we going to do? We have a lot on this already here. You've been busy.
Yeah. Well, we're getting into that time of year where we're looking at renewals. Pretty soon we'll be talking about renewals of property insurance. For this one, we're talking about renewals of health insurance and related insurances. The city has tried really hard to try and control its health insurance costs. It's hard. Right now, we pay about a little over $3 million, Tom, for our health insurance for our city employees. Well, that's a big part of our budget when you pay $3 million for that. That's in our total budget, not just our general fund. So what we're proposing this time is a renewal with Security Health. It would be a 3% increase over last year. We feel that that's reasonable, but I know that anytime the cost goes up, it's potentially problematic. It affects our budget. We've done better with our city employees in the last couple of years, Tom, with controlling the costs. I think people have tried hard to be good consumers. If you have illnesses, if you have injuries, you got to have them treated. You don't just say, well, I want to save the city money, so I'll hole up at home for a while and I can't move. But we do try to encourage them to be good consumers of prescription medications and of their health costs in general. And we feel like that's helped cut down the cost this year we've had increases in the past well more than 3%. So I think we feel this is good. But John Price from M3, he's our insurance consultant, he's going to come talk to us first and say, look, here's where you stand compared to other employers. Here's what the trend has been in insurance. Here's what this proposal looks like. Here's what you've been as a customer for the past couple of years, and suggesting why he thinks it's reasonable. And then entertain council questions. Oftentimes, what we go through in renewal time for health insurance, Tom, is hard. If the proposal is a 10% increase, we're wringing hands. People are saying, what do we do? Do we get other bids? And the council could always ask for that. But I think for this year, I think we're in a good place, and we'll see what the council believes.
And does this have to be done part of the budget process too? Is this why we need to do this now? It's 2022?
It's kind of folded in. I mean, like I said, if they decided they wanted to go out for bids, if they didn't like this, which they could do, we'd have to scramble. We're now into early October. But, we'd have to find somebody else. But we definitely have this bid before us that I think controls our costs well for this year. And it is baked into the budget. This number, 3% increase, is baked into the proposal that I've been working on.
All right, let's talk about that 3% real quickly before we move on to the other topics. Now, 3% is the total cost the city has to pay. It's not 3% per employee, correct?
Yeah, 3% increase would be the premium increase for the entire, everybody's insurance. So, if my insurance was, I'm making this up now, if it was $10,000, it's not. Family insurance is way more than that, but $10,000 a year, this would increase the total premium by 3%. The current plan, Tom, city employees pay 15% and the city pays 85%. So whatever the additional premium is, you'll see that 85-15 split between city and employee in terms of who pays. All that Security Health Plan cares about is the total increase in premium costs.
Okay, yeah, we don't know the exact percent that each employee will have to pay from this year to next. There'll be a little increase, but we haven't done that math yet.
Right, yeah, I haven't seen it. I know we'll have to do it for annual renewal fairly soon. But again, with all we're seeing in terms of inflation, a 3% increase for health insurance probably isn't going to be seen as too outlandish.
No, not too bad. Health insurance nowadays is so different than it used to. When you started, when did you start your career? 25 years ago?
A long time ago. Yeah, I'm not going to go into that.
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. I have some jokes I'll tell you later about that, though.
All right, we'll do that off air. How about that? All right, let's move on to the next one here, Steve. Well, what do we got? New ward boundaries? This has to do with that census that we did in 2020, right?
Yeah, and this is kind of, I hope that the viewers get logged into this one because they're going to want to follow up at some point, watching for more information, talking to the city clerk's office. The 2020 census produced a little bit of shift in terms of where people live in Marshfield. Maybe we had some apartments built, maybe people moved from this apartment to that apartment, or new people came in. And so as a result, some of the council districts might be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. So we had to maneuver that because, again, I think we said this last week, the redistricting committee was forced to look at moving the actual lines so that no district has more than 10% more than the lowest. So if you were a council person and your district had 2,100 people in it, and that was the most of anyone, then if you take 10% less than that, no district could be less than that number, probably 1,900 and something. So if we looked at it and we said, well, people are living here now instead of here, we're all done, we don't have to do anything. Wait a minute. 2,200 people live here, 1,800 people live here. We got to change that because they need to represent roughly the same number of residents. So the committee had to look at that, and they moved some lines around. David Bueller, our GIS coordinator, Deb Hall, our city clerk, did a great job of working with them to help them make these decisions. So now we're looking to adopt a resolution that actually moves those lines and it adopts the new ward boundaries, creates the new wards. And then later on, we have to do an ordinance, I think at the end of the month, to kind of confirm some of these changes too. But ultimately, you're going to want to make sure you know, am I still in the same ward? Do I still vote at the same place? Those things will be discussed later. There'll be more information, and you can certainly contact the city clerk's office when that time comes.
Okay, I understand how that works now. Is that statewide? That has to be that way? So if there's 400 in one district, the other districts have to be within that same amount of pretty close, huh?
I don't know if it's exactly that way, but when you hear the terms like gerrymandering and stuff like that, the state and the county have to come up with ways to balance things off. And sometimes you look at the map when they're done and you say, wow, that was weird. A couple of years ago, we went from having 2 legislative representatives to having 4 because we got carved up, the city of Marshfield got carved up into 2 assembly and 2 senate districts. And some people still are thinking that's crazy, but it's what happened. But we had to wait until the state and the county, Tom, did their redistricting, and then we got the map from the county. That was a starting point for us to decide what we had to do in our own municipality.
Okay, yes, I understand that a little bit better now, and hopefully our residents do. But I guess I have one question.
Yeah.
What happens if one of the aldermen were on that line? They wouldn't be able to switch, right?
My understanding, and I didn't go to all the committee meetings, my understanding is that didn't happen, but it could have. And you can't force somebody out of a job. You couldn't move the line so that there's no representatives here and 2 in this one. You have to try and figure out some way to deal with that. I think that's a long explanation, but that did not happen in this case. There's nobody who's been moved to a different district because of the lines being slightly adjusted. And I will say again too, the adjustments were slight. It's not like everybody in town moved from the west side to the east side at the same time. The adjustments are like 1 street over here or 1 street over there. Fairly minimal, but it will impact some residents.
And this takes place every 10 years because of the census, right?
Correct. They got to track the movement of people and the arrival of new people and make sure that everyone's representing roughly the same number of citizens.
All right. And we have 10 wards?
We have 10 districts. We have, I think, now maybe 19 wards. Now, again, that would be another entire program to talk about, well, why do we even have wards? Well, because that ties to county government too. So we have to kind of make sure that we do wards within the districts. I'm not going to go into that now. The main thing for most people here is the districts, but you do need to know when you go to vote what ward you're in too. So I shouldn't be dismissing that. You'll be getting information though, I think, ultimately, Tom. I think the city clerk's office sends out information if in fact you as a homeowner of a certain property are being moved. So I think you will hear from us, I believe, ultimately. Not that many people does it affect, but those who it does need to know what's changing.
All right, well, I'm working with the clerk's office at this moment, and, well, not at this moment, exactly.
Yeah, right, you're here with me right now, yeah.
I'm really multitasking.
You would be
that.
great then, yeah.
Yes, to bring more information about that, I'll have Deb Hall on a program here as well, and we're also going to talk about the openings for mayor and alderpersons coming up, and that's not long. So we'll get that information out here. My goal yet is this month.
Yeah, thank you for that. The filing period starts on December 1st, so we're really not that far off.
I know, it goes fast. All right, let's move on to a piece that has to do with me. Yeah. Community Media Day. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, this is a request to approve a resolution declaring October 20th as Community Media Day. That brings to mind the fact that you are involved in an organization called Wisconsin Community Media. Is that what it's called?
Yes, it is.
And maybe tell us a little bit about that so that we know when we talk about Community Media Day, what kind of things are happening behind the scenes that are beneficial, that comes from those efforts?
All right, I'll tell you a little bit about what community media is. It's formerly public access is what it was referred to. A lot of these stations now are called community media centers, so that's why they call it Community Media Day. This is across the country, so a lot of stations. There's well over 4,000 different stations like this yet. Some states don't have it, but ours does. And there is some valuable information that we share as a group called Wisconsin Community Media. I'm a board member, been for many years, actually since the start of when I got into this field in 2011, and got right into the board and enjoy it. And we have quite a few board members. We have different committees, and that it's structured exactly like government. It was a little hard for me at first when I started that in 2011, and it's like they're voting and motions, and I'm like, really, do we have to do that? Well, I figured out fast that's what you do here. Very organized. We actually have an executive director that we pay. And we have a Community Media Day. That's what this is about, on the 20th, to celebrate the good works. Now, community media means everybody. This is engagement by the public. It's not just Tom Loucks or Steve Barg doing a program. This is everybody. If you watch all our church services, that's an example of sharing community media. We're sharing that information out. Their videos, sports that we do from Zaleski Sports, we put that on. This is an opportunity for people to voice their concerns too, because this is really what Facebook was years ago. But wouldn't it have been something if the government, because this is a public access is really run by government. I always said if we were the first, if we did like Facebook back then, because Facebook isn't really say regulated. And I don't want to get off tangent, but we can't deny programming. It's part of the First Amendment here that we do. So programming is accepted to put on these platforms, but that's all part of what community media is. Right. And it's growing. You'd think, what do you mean it's growing? It's public access. It really is. It's another form, medium of getting it out. We're beyond public or cable television. We're out there streaming. We're doing so much that you wouldn't hear in the general media because they're not there to do it. So Community Media Day, we want to celebrate that. It's every year. And we want to thank all of the producers that are out there from our local churches.
Oh, absolutely.
We have over a dozen now. And look at, you go to church at Cornerstone, if that's all right to say that.
That's right. No, that's okay.
There's kids involved in those productions.
Yep.
They're pretty high-end, amazing. And most of those producers, are learning two things, they're why they're there and learning videography. So I think it's a win-win, and it's all part of community media.
Well, the three words I know I use a lot, I think you use them quite a bit too: inform, educate, and engage. And really, Wisconsin Community Media is all about those kind of things. So.
Yes, it definitely is. And we have a conference actually coming up in Milwaukee. We do 2 a year.
Great.
And we'll be learning all these techniques that you're seeing. by other colleagues of mine, and we have meetings weekly. So
Excellent.
anybody who wants to get
Excellent.
involved in this, they just got to reach
Beautiful.
out. Kids, anybody, any kids, that great place to learn. We have a full studio here. That's what it's for. So
Excellent.
all they do is have to reach out, and they could be even helping film this thing right now with us. Help us out. So
Excellent.
all right, Steve, I'll give it back to you. What do we have next?
Well, I guess the next one would be the request for approval of an agreement to have professional services provided to the police chief recruitment process. I think we might have touched on that before. We talked a little bit about the whole replacing the police chief position for a little while, and I know it's been going kind of slow in some people's minds, but this will be an improvement or an agreement with McGrath. And McGrath is out of the Northern Illinois area, just to cement their role again in terms of trying to find a new police chief. They'll be looking internally and externally. They'll be leading the process with help from Jen Rakew, our human resource director, as far as some of the logistics and the things that they need done on our end. But that agreement will be before the council. The Fire and Police Commission is supportive, and I assume that the council probably will be too. And that will really jumpstart the process to the next phase. When those folks are on board, they can really get it going here.
Well, I don't think you can give us a time when we'll have a new police chief. I'm sure people are wondering, but being part of being a department head, I should say, not part of one.
Yeah.
The commission is taking their time. It's important for them to do this and really look because right now everything is running really well with Pat Zeps.
It is. It's been 7 months since the former chief Rick Gramsel left, and I think Pat Zeps deserves a lot of accolades for what he's doing. He's done a good job of trying to just move the department forward and get us to calmer waters. But this group will come on board. I assume sometime early in 2022 you'll start hearing some meaningful results from this, because we do want to get a new chief on board, but we want to do it thoughtfully.
All right. Let's talk about assessing. That's a big piece here. We don't have a full-time, we have a deputy full-time assessor here, but not an actual a full-time company. Is that right? What's going on there with this RFQ?
Yeah. For people who've lived here for a long time, they probably remember the name Joan Spencer. Joan Spencer was the city's assessor for more than 3 decades, probably closer to 4 decades. Tremendous employee, did a great job. When she retired, we talked about, do we try and find another staff assessor? Do we find a company? And it turns out that, especially in central Wisconsin, but even more broadly than that, it's hard to find people for that staff assessor position now. A lot of it's done by companies who, farm out their services, and they sign an agreement with you to come here, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, whatever it is, and provide that leadership. Keith Pugh is our deputy assessor, and he does a great job. So he would still be here in the office every day, but we're looking to see if we can't find an individual or a firm to be the city assessor. So we've sent out a request for qualifications. We don't talk about RFQ a lot. We usually talk about RFP, which is a request for proposals. But a request for qualifications is say, look, we're looking for somebody who we think might be a good fit here. Tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, who the people are that might be working with us if we're selected. If we select you to do this, and then we take those proposals and we have to figure out, okay, how do we narrow it down to one to negotiate an agreement with? So we haven't talked price with anybody yet. We want to find the firm that looks like the best fit and then try and negotiate a contract. That's kind of a different process than requests for proposals where you get a price right up front. But we think that there's enough variability in terms of what the expectations might be, and we want to make sure that the two sides are on the same page before we say, okay, you're the one we really like to work with if we can come up with an acceptable price. But we want to discuss all the expectations on both sides first. So I'm just going to give them an update. We're going to talk a little bit about what the process will be from there, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, can you tell me in a brief sentence what is an assessor does the taxes for the people that don't know what an assessor is?
He's responsible for all the assessed value of property in the community. That's residential, industrial, and commercial. So right now, let's say your house is valued at $200,000. That's what your taxes are based on, when you get your tax bill. And sometimes changes occur. You take a building permit out, you add an addition, you finish your basement, whatever, that changes the value of your house. And so they keep track of all that, and they make modifications based upon some of the changes they're seeing sometimes in the market. And so they answer questions, and they deal with the assessed values of property. If you're mad about your taxes, they're the wrong people to go to. It'd be me. But if you're mad about the fact you think that your home is being valued on the books at more than it's worth, that's the person you want to speak with.
All right. Well, you just put yourself out there.
I know, I've done that before,
mad
Tom.
at you, so you don't need. But anyway, I don't see
Yeah.
people mad at anyone about it. It's part of life. Every city
Yeah.
has to, and town, village, you name it, has to
It
pay
is.
taxes. Even anybody that lives out of town has to pay their
Right.
fair share of taxes. It's just part of life.
Yep, it is.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to what do we got here? Remote participation. It has to do with. Oh, it all started with COVID, really, right?
Yeah, it did. And the next two items are going to seem familiar because we've talked about them before. And I've been meaning to bring this back to the council. I thought I'd get it back in one of the meetings in September, but the budget interrupted, and I've been kind of tied up with that. But yeah, it all started with COVID. Until then, we never allowed people to be on Zoom. We never did those kind of meetings. But then with the Governor Evers encouraging that, now we need to have a policy, really, the city attorney says. So I've talked to a number of cities. I've gotten responses from many communities around us, Tom. And there's one in an area community that I like that basically says, here's the expectations. You can participate remotely under these conditions. And do you have a good internet connection where you're at? We certainly don't want somebody wavering and you can't hear them and then they cut in and out and some other things. But making it possible for people when it's needed or when it's convenient for them to participate remotely and vote and be part of the meeting. So we'll see what they think about that. I think that there's an openness to that. Everybody has times when they have to be away out of town and they'd still like to log on to their computer and be part of the meeting. I think this will be seen as beneficial.
All right, so it is a recommendation
Yep.
to go that way.
Yep.
So the council will vote on that.
Yeah, it's a matter of what they want to include in that policy, but I definitely would like to see them approve a policy.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Weapons in City Hall. I think that was discussed a while back. Now it's back on here.
Yeah, it was back in late July, and I really think that this is going to be the time when the council votes. I'm going to bring them a couple pieces of information since they last talked, and one is from the city attorney that really there's no liability issue either way, whether they have this policy or whether they don't, prohibiting firearms in City Hall. The other one is I'm going to share with them a survey I did of other communities and what I found in terms of what they allow and what they don't. I think the majority of communities still say no weapons allowed in City Hall, but some do allow them. I'll lay out a little chart showing what I found from the different communities. Honestly, Tom, it's going to be a political decision. And it's very possibly going to mirror, and maybe we've talked about this before, what you hear if you turn on cable TV, about the safety of being around weapons versus the Second Amendment rights. All these kind of things are going to come into the discussion, but it's probably going to be just up to the council. And you remember 2 years ago, it was 5-4 to keep the signs up that say no weapons in City Hall. This time, I don't know, it could be 6-3, 5-4 the other way. I guess we'll just see what the council thinks after they hear the information. But I would like to see them, if not at this meeting, Tom, and maybe the next meeting, take action and let's either keep the current policy or go the other direction.
All right, so when you say weapons, do you mean guns, knives, or I guess curious, what do you mean by weapons?
We often talk about firearms, but if you look at the signs when you come to the door, it says no weapons, which would mean knives or other things. Typically the concern here is concealed carry, whether or not concealed carry should be allowed at City Hall, like it is many other places, or whether that's deemed to be not appropriate.
Okay, well, we'll hear from you first, presenting that, correct? Yep.
Yep,
Present
correct.
by you.
I'll present that item.
And then we'll have discussion by the council if warranted and possible vote either way.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about Mary Bessler is appointed, or will be appointed, his request to be appointed. How about that?
Yeah, a lot of times we don't talk about the appointments that come in at the end of the agenda, but this one 2 weeks ago was discussed, and I think you remember that. Gordy Earl has resigned from the Fire and Police Commission, so we need someone to replace him for a term that ends in April of 2024. And we got 8 people interested. They sent emails. Our council president, Nick Pacia, went through them, and he's recommending the approval of Mary Bessler. Mary actually got a chance to speak at the last council meeting, came to the podium, talked a little bit about herself, her background, her interest, reasons for wanting to be on the committee, on the commission. And but there was some debate among some council members who said, wait a minute, now there were other candidates. Can we see them? Can you have them come to the podium and talk about why they'd want to be on? We normally only do that for the Utilities Commission. We just went through that the other day with Mike Ebro being reappointed. And so I think Nick Paschal, the city, the council president, Nick was kind of thinking, well, that's not really what I was anticipating. There was discussion about whether Nick, as council president, has the same authority as the mayor to make the appointment subject to council approval, or whether he doesn't have that authority. It appears that he does have that authority. So I think what you're going to see on Tuesday night is Nick is going to come forward again and say, my recommendation is Mary, what's your verdict? Thumbs up or thumbs down? And we'll see what the council wants to do. And like I said, I know a number of them would want to know who the other people are. They've seen letters from the others. They've seen the letters. They know who all 8 of the candidates are. But at least a couple of them wanted to see from them in person. But it looks like we're just going to have them decide whether they think Mary is appropriate or not, because that's kind of what the code would suggest, as a city attorney has ruled.
Sounds good, Steve. We have come to the end of the agenda. There is a closed session, but we won't. There's nothing here for us to bring up about
Yeah, nothing
that.
I can really talk about the 3 items. I don't think there'll be action taken on those items either.
All right. Well, that ends another council preview for this month already. Right? No, it's the beginning.
Beginning of the month. Yep.
I'm way behind.
That's okay.
All right.
Can I throw one more plug in?
Please do.
For the strategic plan. You did a good job by putting out some information on that. And through the 19th of October, we're taking feedback from you. So if you're listening to us, watching us on various platforms, take a look. You can get a link to it from what Tom put out there and look at it. It's 7 categories that have a number of items that we want to do in the next 3 years. But council wants your feedback. Do they look good? Do you have other goals that you think the city ought to be pursuing in the next 3 years? Whatever thoughts you have, throw them at us. Again, call, email, letter, come to the meeting, come to one of our public comment sessions on Tuesday, or the following Tuesday for that matter, I think, following Monday. But tell us what you think about that, because on the 26th of October, we're going to talk about it again. And perhaps then, even at that time, we might approve a 3-year plan for 2022 through 2024. So give us your best shot after you've had a chance to review it.
All right. You can find that on our city website, ci.marshfield.wi.us. Go under the government tab and go all the way down and look for strategic plan. You'll find the 2019 to 2021 there, but you'll also find the preliminary one here. I call it preliminary because it's not been voted on yet, to look at that plan. And you said how many pages was it? 8, 9?
I think it's 8 pages. Yeah. It has 7 categories to review. And
Steve requested that if you have comments or suggestions, ideas, is to provide that to him directly. And you can call him 715-486-2003. Email steve.barg, B-A-R-G, at ci.marshfield.wi.us before the 21st. Right?
By the 19th, by the end of the day, 19th, if you can. Now, if you can't, you can still shoot it to me after that, but that's the target. And thanks for giving me or giving them my information directly. That's gives them a chance to connect right from this program.
Yeah, some of the council members had asked to do that, so this is what we're doing, is to provide public information, or get their information from them, their ideas, and we'll see how that fits in.
Well, and that's the third of the words we talked about earlier. Not just inform and educate, but we want to engage. We want to hear what you think. You're all about that. I'm all about that, and we want to keep following that path.
Yep, that's why I'm here. That's the other part of what I do as a communications director, work with you guys, not just, but community TV is another piece. So, all right, well, let's sign off here. It's well over 35 minutes. I know it's longer, but that's okay. We have good information to share. And I want to thank you guys for watching us on Council Preview, and we'll be back in a couple weeks for possibly our second budget meeting and our second council meeting of the month. Thanks for watching.